Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. This video is going to be all about Bran's flashbacks, what they are, what's going on, and what they're using them for during Season 6. So just careful for spoilers for everything that's happened so far. Quick refresher, Bran is a Green Seer. He is learning from another Green Seer, the Blood Raven, also known as the Three-Eyed Raven, who's a really big figure in Westerosi history that we'll talk about in a second. But we've seen him do a number of different things on the show. We've seen him warg into Summer and Hodor. We've seen him travel back in time. We've seen him project himself astrally across space and time. So there's a lot more to Greenside that Bran hasn't learned yet that we'll probably get to see as the rest of the season goes on. But it's a much more broad-based power over nature that ties back to the Children of the Forest. All of the Children of the Forest, by default, are born with the powers that Green Seers have. Green Seers are what you call a human being that's born with those powers. And it's like 1 in every 1,000 wargs is born a Green Seer. So if a fraction of the population is born with warging abilities, then a fraction of that population are born Green Seers, which is why they called the Blood Raven before Bran came along the last Green Seer. And in the books, he's about 200 years old. The TV show is doing a couple different things with the timeline, so we'll just have to adjust depending on how they explain things. But the big disclaimer, and I probably should have said this at the beginning of the video, is that as the seasons of the show get on, they're departing from the books more and more. So I think a lot of the big conclusions that they draw will be very similar to the conclusions that we reach in the books, but the way they get there will be different, and there might actually be a couple of different things. Like when they make a big reveal on the TV show, it might go down very differently in the books. So depending on the things that we happen and the big twists in the plot, we'll just have to remember that. Like they might be a little bit different when we actually get Winds of Winter, because it's starting to seem more and more like that book isn't going to drop till the Christmas shopping season this year. There hasn't been any marketing materials for Winds of Winter, so I'm just assuming at this point we're not going to see it till much later this year. So we've learned in the first couple of episodes that Bran can astrally project himself into the past. He has a loose ability to connect with people in those scenes, like they can actually hear what he says just a little bit, so there is a bit of a bleed effect, and we actually have seen the Night's King in the trailer grab his arm, but all I think that means is they're implying there's this loose connection that everything has across space and time, so even if Bran is seeing the Night's King in the past, and he grabs him, that doesn't mean that Bran is physically in the past. It seems more like the Night's King is also projecting himself astrally across space and time, so they're kind of interacting with each other in this astral sense. I don't expect them to do it, but the real test would be if Ned Stark, like young Ned Stark, could reach out and grab Bran, then we would know for sure. But just remember the idea that everything is connected, so things can bleed through Bran from present to past. There are a lot of people that have wondered, maybe there's a crazy theory that the Mad King went mad because Bran derped while he was astrally projecting, so maybe Bran inadvertently set off Robert's Rebellion. It's kind of an outlandish theory, but I do think that they're going to pay off most of Robert's Rebellion in Bran's flashbacks, which kind of a double-edged sword because I know a lot of people want a prequel set during Robert's Rebellion. Like if HBO is going to do a spin-off series, maybe they do Robert's Rebellion. That's a whole other thing, and I think they'd actually be better off doing Dunk and Egg or something like that. But it seems like we're actually getting the story of Robert's Rebellion through Bran's flashbacks broken up across the season. So that probably means they're going to save the biggest reveals for the last episode. So just plan for them to stretch everything out across all 10 episodes this season. Right now, it seems like it's a relatively disconnected plot, like Bran's stuff all exists on its own, but they're starting to weave it in with modern day stuff. Like Bran is largely by himself, so all these flashbacks, all the things he's learning about, haven't really affected the other main characters yet. Like the things that he has learned hasn't directly affected Jon Snow yet, but it seems like eventually that's where it's headed, because if Daenerys is going to come to Westeros with her army, how is she going to learn about the White Walkers? Well, most of what we've learned about everything comes through Bran, so Bran would probably be the person to explain it all. Look, you've heard a lot of stories, but I actually saw it. I went back and saw it. So the flashbacks have become the show's way of saying, look, all the stories you've heard about all these things are wrong. People have been telling it wrong. I know the real truth. Never has that been more clear than with Melisandre's storyline. She thought that Stannis was the one who was promised. That went sideways. Then Jon Snow was resurrected. Oh wow, you are very clearly the prince who was promised. That's a whole other thing too we'll have to talk about as we get more evidence, because the way that prophecy is interpreted is a little derpy, because originally it was written in High Valyrian, which is gender neutral. So a lot of people think that Daenerys might be the prince who was promised, because the term prince is very gender specific and that didn't exist in the original Valyrian passage, so it's a bit of a misinterpretation. So there is a lot of misinterpretation when it comes to the past and prophecies that the show is now using the flashbacks to throw water on or to clarify, look, this is what really happened. So you have all this set up in the Bran flashbacks. Hodor, you can talk. What happened to you? Then as the season gets on, it slowly pays those things off. Who's in that tower? Who is that woman screaming? What's going on? So the really important thing about these flashbacks you guys need to pay attention to is that they become metaphors for what's happening in present day, a song of ice and fire. So there are a lot of characters that have loaded dialogue that might imply things like when Melisandre says, "You are the prince who was promised." But if you thought that was very important, then the Bran stuff, like the stuff that is said in Bran flashbacks by characters, is vastly more important than that. So I really feel like the Bran flashbacks are the most important storyline this year, just because they're giving you the real story of what's going on. Let me know in the comments though, because we're getting Robert's Rebellion in Bran's flashbacks, where do you want them to go next? And how long do you think it's going to be before Daenerys learns about the White Walkers? Because she's been consumed with this Dothraki, Meereen, Slaver's Bay plot for the last couple of seasons. She hasn't said anything about White Walkers or what's happening north of the Wall. She's mostly concerned with solving her immediate problems, then bringing her army and conquering Westeros. She hasn't said anything about a White Walker yet. So I'm hoping that Bran starts communicating with Tyrion or her small council, or somebody starts telling Daenerys that there is a much bigger problem north of the Wall. But what's going to happen tonight is I'll post my episode 5 video after the episode airs, so be sure to subscribe to get that. There's also a new round of the giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this video. There's all kinds of crazy stuff. I'm actually really excited. Just remember, if you're really upset that they haven't answered a lot of big questions, that they've seemed like they've done a pretty good job of paying things off, setting up and paying things off during Bran's flashbacks. So if there's something that they've teased, they will probably pay it off this season. While you guys wait for my video to post tonight, you can click here for my Rick and Stark theory video, and you can click here for my episode 4 video from last week. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.